All right, there we go. Welcome everyone. My name is Ann Nutter-Kaufman. I'm a manager in our teacher quality department at the National Education Association, and we are super excited to have you join us tonight. This is a topic, quite frankly, that we have really wanted to do a webinar on for months and trying to balance everything that folks are asking for and what we need. This is just happens to be where this particular webinar topic landed, but we think it's so important, these topics around social emotional learning and what we as educators can do within our classrooms and our schools. So thank you so much for joining us. A couple of things before I pass it on. This webinar will be recorded. It will be available for you to review. The PowerPoint slides and all of those things will also be on our website, which will give you all that information at the end. In the chat box, you will notice folks putting in links to the downloadable PowerPoint slides. So you can go ahead and do that. And then also we can provide a certificate for attending the webinar. We will give you instructions at the end. Okay. So it is my pleasure to pass it on to our NEA Executive Committee member, Mark Jewell. Mark.
Hello, everyone. I bring you greetings from Raleigh, North Carolina. And the first thing I want to do is our land acknowledgement. And in North Carolina actually has the largest American Indian population east of the Mississippi River and the 8th largest Indian population in the United States, representing 130,000 American Indians and over 11,000 public school children in our system. We begin by acknowledging the Tuscarora people here in North Carolina. We honor America's first people and all elders, past, present, and emerging. And we are called on to learn and share what we can about their tribal history, the culture, and contributions that have been suppressed in telling the American story. So greetings, Team NEA. I am so excited to be here on behalf of NEA Executive Committee. I'm an elementary teacher from Greensboro, North Carolina, in my 34th year of teaching. So I am honored to be here with my colleagues on tonight's webinar topic, which is social and emotional learning in a virtual space. And it's a direct result of member attendees from our August webinar series asking for a deeper training on these issues. Now, the webinar this evening is one way supporting our members in their professional school protocols that have ranged from remote learning to a hybrid version to full school attendance. Anxiety and stress have been exacerbated, making it essential to implement stronger systems to meet the social and emotional needs of our students and our members. So it's going to look very different for everyone, and no one has the right answers, but we do have some of the best practices around distance learning that we can share here tonight and also on educatingthroughcrisis.org. So please know that NEA doesn't endorse any particular product or platform, but instead, these webinars are members talking about their tools and platforms that have been working for them in this online space. And our members here, we've got two of the best, are our experts on distance learning and webinars that are led by our experienced educators and staff. And afterwards, we're going to ask you to fill out a short evaluation form at the end that's going to identify some other topics that you're going to be interested in hearing in future webinars. So it is my honor to pass off to our facilitators, Veronica Cha and Anna Gonzalez. So welcome to Veronica and Anna.
Thank you. So just some webinar procedures to start off. The Q&A will be used more for content questions. And if you have any tech issues, please go ahead and use the chat. Oops, sorry, that's okay. And then if you want to just ask the questions, we'll be happy to answer them as soon as we can. And if we don't answer them within the webinar, we'll have time at the end. Alrighty, and so hello, I'm Veronica Chet. I am a 4th year teacher now. I used to teach high school chemistry, and now I teach middle school math and science.
I'm Anna Gonzalez. I am in my 4th year teaching also. I used to work in elementary school for 2 years back when I lived in Texas. I worked in a high school for a year after that, and now I'm a middle school project lead the way teacher. If you guys don't know what that is, it's like middle school engineering. You might notice that we are in the same space. It might be a little bit trippy, but that is because we are roommates. We both went to the University of Michigan for undergrad, and during grad school, we actually met on the 2nd day. And we kind of bonded over like our backgrounds and just who we are as people. Our philosophies on teaching and learning really aligned. And that leads us to
what we learned in grad school. So why is social emotional learning so important? We have a very beloved professor, Dr. Shari Saunders, who taught us this traditional Maasai greeting that tribe leaders would offer to each other. And translated, it would say, "How are the children?" And the traditional response would be, "All the children are well." So it is the premise or the goal of each tribe to make sure that the focus of the tribe is to make sure the children are well. And so that's kind of how we bonded. We really think that children's wellness and being whole children is what makes us as teachers that's our most important job.
because we teach children, not just subjects. Right?
Exactly. Yep. Teach a
Number
child first. So today, our overarching goal would be to create meaningful relationships with and between students in a safe and inclusive virtual space. Being in this unprecedented pandemic, this is already challenging, but to do this with more intention and more more a focus goal, and how to do that virtually is what we're going to be talking about.
And this is one of our favorite webinars to lead. We lead more than one. And this one's like our favorite.
Yeah, it's going to be funny. So we're going to start with our fruit friends. We promised that would be funny. And really quickly, we have 2 fruit friends. Going too quickly. We've got our friend Piper the pineapple and Pear Deck. So Piper the pineapple is a visual, sorry, I'm taking this one, visual cue that lets you know that there's a teacher move happening on the slide. Pear Deck, not to get too techie on you all, Pear Deck is a Google Slide add-on that lets you make interactive slides that your students can work with either synchronously or asynchronously. Within your copy of the slides, you'll see some extra Pear Deck slides you can copy and paste for your own use. And we've added some videos there for you as well.
Alrighty, so what is social emotional learning? One thing we love to do is to engage your background knowledge. Like, what do you already know? So I want you to think back on your personal classroom. In your physical space, what do you do to practice SEL? And then maybe what is something that you hope to learn while you are sitting with us on a Monday night? Go ahead, type in the chat. We'll try to follow along. There are 401 of you, so I don't read that quickly, but I'll try to keep up. So we're going to give you 1 minute right now. Maybe, yeah, 1 minute right now. Go ahead, type in the chat. I'm seeing call and respond and Google Meet chat, greeting, share activity.
And there it goes.
Let's just zoom in on past. Daily check-in with social skills, choose love, someone said. Morning meetings, circles. Wow, it goes so fast. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of choosing love, getting these circles, feelings charts, awesome. A lot of what I'm reading right now, we are going to address in the physical classroom and how we can convert that into a virtual space. So I saw mindfulness, which is awesome. Zoom sentence starters I read, daily goals. This is great. You guys could lead this. Like, why are we even here?
Putting gifts in chats, definitely.
Yes, check in social skills. How much time? 1 more second.
Excellent.
Cool. And if you guys didn't notice, that timer had puppies on it because we love puppies.
All right. And then you want to talk about the virtual one?
Oh, yeah. So hopefully everything that you guys have mentioned, anything that you are wondering about or questioning or want answered, that we hope to answer tonight. We're
So
excited.
something that I noticed in the chat was how we connect with students who don't turn on their camera. There are ways. Most of them are making a fool of yourself and just kind of giving prompts in the chat, but we'll get to that. All right, so we're going to talk about some definitions that we'll use throughout. First, we'll focus on a couple of definitions that are more general.
Yep. So the first one is social emotional learning. It's the process of learning. So we got a lot of our information from the website CASTLE, which is a collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning. We have all of these websites, everything that we mentioned will be addressed later on. You guys will have these materials and these resources later on. But social emotional learning allows kids to identify emotions, goals, empathy, relationships, and decision making. Up next is CRT, or culturally responsive teaching. This acknowledges the students and not only acknowledges them and their backgrounds, but it also utilizes what they know, where they're coming from, and incorporates that into their learning. So those are the two big things that we will throw around.
And then going deeper into the 5 components of SEL. The first one we have is
self-awareness. And this is, I think about it in 2 spaces. One is emotions, and then the other is personal identity, and having kids familiar with both.
The next one is self-management. So having students, after they are able to identify how they're feeling, how to regulate their emotions, and then kind of make decisions around behaviors that will help them reach their goals.
For social awareness, we want to focus a lot on social cues and social skills, but just like how self-awareness has personal identity, we also want them to think about how they see the world and how the world sees them. And that we're gonna kind of drill in today.
Okay, I see a big question about high school chemistry. Well, I can't address it now, but we will address it in a minute. We're also going to focus on relationship building and giving students examples of healthy relationships, and not only to know what are components of a healthy relationship, but then also to how to maintain those healthy relationships and communicate effectively so that maintaining can actually happen.
And the last piece of the puzzle is responsible decision making. This, you might notice, is in the frontal lobe, and a lot of science people out there know that the frontal lobe is the decision making part of the brain, and that isn't fully formed until they're 25. So a lot of what they do, their impulse control, all of that kind of stuff, for a lack of a better word, isn't fully formed until much after they leave us. So helping them to get to that space and recognizing that all of these parts of SEL, these 5 components, all lead to responsible decision making.
Absolutely. And so this is, these are the 5 components that we'll focus on. Again, this graphic is not only cute, but informative. All of these puzzle pieces have to come together for our students to be whole students. So another thing that we like to think about, or I like to share with my students, is sometimes students are around the term self-care. They're like, oh, homework, I cannot. I'm going to self-care and go play video games for an hour. And what we want to teach our students is, hey, like, yes, you are recognizing that you feel a certain way. You want to not feel that way and cope with some video games or something that makes you happy. But is your response to that rooted in responsibility? Is it thinking about other people? And there's a Korean word for I don't know if anyone out there is Korean, but it's called nunchi. And it's kind of like situational awareness, right? It's like, what can I do that is for the betterment of everyone around me, and minimizing my burden on other people. It's kind of like how I think about it, and rooting all of those choices in responsibility. So we'll come back to this graphic a little bit later. Cool. All right, so we're gonna now really dive deep into the 5 components, and we will start first with self-awareness.
Yeah, and as we go through each component, this little student head thing, this will be our working agenda. So you'll see each part light up as we go through. So self-awareness, the ability to identify and name emotions and have accurate perception of oneself. So we're asking 3 questions. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? And who am I? Which is a super easy question to answer, I'm sure, for everyone, ever. Alrighty, so I noticed a lot of you guys use feeling faces charts. We use that too online. Usually I call on students and have them share with the group, how are you feeling today? If you would rather private chat it, you can too. This feeling faces chart is from Trails to Wellness, and it is linked in these slides if you want to borrow it. Another way that we can do these check-ins is through Pear Deck. One cool feature is that students can draw directly onto the slide when they have it open in their Pear Deck. So this is anonymous, and it helps you get a good feel of what your class is feeling that day. Oh, okay. Sorry, I was like, where did the picture go? Another thing that I like to utilize is having confidence checks mixed in with feeling checks. So sometimes we take quizzes, and afterwards I ask them, how did you feel on it? Did you feel like you could do it on your own, or do you need help, or where are you on that spectrum? And then once you set that, how are you actually feeling? How do you feel about everything? And these are 2 different questions that we're asking. And it's very, very informative. Oh, and then additionally, there's checks for understanding. So content, how do you feel about it? Good, confused, or not so great?
Right. Another thing that we can do is have students reflect on their learning. I think this one's you.
This is me. Yeah. You're right. So another check for understanding that we can do is after class. So not just asking how are they feeling now, not just asking what content did you learn, but engaging in that metacognition. Not just what did you learn, but how did you learn it? How did you get to where you wanted to be?
So at the summer school level, when we were piloting our Schoology LMS during the summer, questions that we would ask our students, so they had a weekly journal, were these same 4 questions at the end of each week. And this lets students reflect on what they've done throughout the week and kind of discuss what their own progress was throughout that learning time. So what we'd like you to do is in the chat, please try to compose a reflection question that you would like to ask your students. This could be rooted in what content that they covered. So on a scale of 1 to 4, how are you feeling about the learning targets? Or it could just be really specific questions about how they're feeling. So for example, like Chris said, what went well today? You can focus on positives and thinking about those types of things, or you could think about what things could have gone differently for them. Another question I like to ask, or I have them finish this sentence, is if this didn't happen then. So a lot of kids sometimes tell me my internet was going bananas, my dog was going bananas, anything like that. Oh, I like the plus and delta chart. Changes and positives, love this. How did you contribute? What do you think contributed to your feeling? Yes.
There's an I used to think, but now I think.
Yep. And so these are reflection questions that we know. What do you think of Lenny's relationship with George? I love that. We know that asking our students these questions is important, but sometimes it gets lost in this kind of rush to like cover content. In this year where everything takes 20 times longer than it normally does, there's this like weird pressure to get things done. But sometimes, most of the time, having setting aside extra space for students to reflect really kind of solidifies the learning for them. Alrighty. And so if you were to do this on a Pear Deck, your students you could change this text and your students would be able to answer a question in a text box format.
Cool. And then self-awareness also, I noticed a lot of people had written mindfulness in the chat, and that is a huge thing. Today was a really busy day for the both of us, and there was barely a time where we were able to just stop everything and just kind of take account of where we were. take stock of like what was happening. And it's really important for us to model this with our children and really pause and allow them to think about this. We will talk about this more later on in the session, but mindfulness is huge. These 4 bullet points are what I say usually when I have students just stop. Cool. And another part of self-awareness is a lot of times they are fidgety or they can't stop moving and they don't know why. So being able to pinpoint, okay, my body's doing this, so I might be feeling this kind of way. This video is called Mood Walk by Go Noodle. It's pretty great, also linked into the slides. And what it does is they model how they'll name an emotion and then they model how to act that emotion. So maybe you might be feeling impatient and then the men say, you know, sidestep, wring out your hands, like you are impatient, you're checking your watch. Do you think we have time to watch like 30 seconds of it?
If you want.
Yeah. I think it's a great video.
It just goes into the physical manifestations of a student's emotions.
Yeah.
Regular walk.
Play a little bit.
Now, I'm gonna name an emotion and you walk like that emotion.
Got it. Let's do it. Walk like you're impatient. Jittery steps. Walk side to side, then back. Crunched up face. Tight jaw. Wring your hands. Look at your watch. You are impatient.
So, it also helps kids to recognize emotions in other people. So this is a really great video. I used it with kinder, 1st, 2nd, and also 7th and 8th grade. And it gets kids up and moving. And if you act it out, you act goofy and they get to see you acting goofy.
Excellent. Another great feature of Pear Deck is they have these preloaded slides or pre-loaded templates that you can use where you can customize the text at the bottom. So for this case, like, how do you feel on your preparation for distance learning? And so you could be anywhere on this scale and really telling students that this isn't about feeling positive, it's about feeling aware of what you're feeling. So if students are at a 10, we need to acknowledge and invite those feelings to the table since all feelings are valid, and just give students some strategies on how they can not feel that way, because probably they're not going to want to feel super without control of their emotions.
Okay, so another huge part about self-awareness is this idea of personal identity. I'm currently working with 6th through 8th graders, and it's really hard for them to classify themselves in certain ways. Over the summer, I had the privilege of writing curriculum for about 600 kids in the district. 40 teachers used it, implemented it, and it was awesome. And this kind of was all born out of the George Floyd murders and all the riots that were happening and all of this chaos, it felt like, in the world back in June and late May. And as I was writing this curriculum, I was thinking, how can we get to the children and have them really understand what is happening and how we can combat that? And in reflecting and talking with multiple people and researching, one thing is having students really understand who they are and what makes them who they are before they can approach the rest of the world. So we had just addressed like the what am I feeling, why am I feeling this way? Now we're focusing on who am I? And so this activity, we had defined what is personal identity. And then we allowed them the time and space to identify parts of them that they feel were important. So we gave them time to write a list of everything that they identified. This was a private list. They could put whatever they felt that they were on it. We let it sit for about 24 hours. And then if they wanted to add anything, they could add anything. And then they created an identity map. And everything that was closer to their name was something that was more important to them as a human. And what it really did, it allowed all the kids to connect with each other. We posted them into a media album, and they were able to comment about things that they learned about each other and wanted to learn more about. We'll talk more about that kind of social awareness and that relationship building later on, but personal identity is huge, especially when kids aren't even sure who they are yet. And this is an activity that you can do with younger grades too. Instead of using words, you might be just using images and pictures.
Another thing, just to address some questions coming up in the chat about how to do things asynchronously. This is a great example of a way that you can do an asynchronous activity where you give students the prompt. Maybe you record a video of yourself, maybe audio of yourself, or just have students read directions on how you'd create this identity map and where you'd upload it, and pose thoughtful discussion questions around it so that you could still have these discussions in an asynchronous space. So definitely some extra thinking that you might have to do on how to make these strategies or these practices work in an asynchronous space, but it's not impossible. So here are some key ideas you'll see this screen at the end of every component breakdown for each of the 5 components, and they'll be linked in your checklist that you'll receive at the end.
So we won't read them to you because we know how awful that feels.
Yes.
Cool. Self-management. So once you know that your kids are identifying their feelings and know why they're feeling the way that they are, it's important for them to understand how they can move forward and be constructive and be productive once they have that identifier.
So when we're looking at back to this graphic, whatever they're deciding, like when they recognize how they're feeling, that is all about that self-awareness. And then this next piece here is about managing. How do I take my current feelings and make it so that they are productive and constructive for me in my current space?
Oh, yes, this is me also. Okay, so earlier we had talked about mindfulness. Mindfulness is a superpower. This is a video by Happify. It is mainly for adults, but I was able to edit it down so that it was more for children. But the summer program that I wrote the curriculum for, we taught our kids about mindfulness from day 1. After that, we were slowly introducing self-care strategies throughout the rest of it, so that from day 1, we knew what mindfulness was. We slowly introduced mindfulness activities. And then by day 9, they were able to tell me which of their activities were the favorites. We have all of these different activities listed right here in your copy, or later on, we will have resources for you that links specific videos to these things.
All right.
Yeah, sorry.
So we're actually right at our midway point, which is the best timing we've ever done on this presentation.
We usually get really excited and talk a lot.
So we are going to go through a breathing exercise. So breathing exercises are key mindfulness strategies that you can use with your students. And honestly, just facilitating for my students has really helped me in my own breathing practice. So that's nice. I see one question in the chat: is the curriculum up for sale? No, it's not.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the legal ramifications are, but I did hand it all over to Ann Arbor Public Schools. So I'm not sure if I can spread it out.
Yeah. I just want to make sure, because that's always a question that we can.
That is true.
Anne is shaking her head no.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a truly amazing thing. And there are bits and pieces throughout this that you should definitely take that are just,
And I
snapshots.
noticed someone wrote, do you have anything that's a bit older for the high school kids? A lot of these things have been used for high school. I don't have any data to see how well it went.
I can tell you from the limited feedback I got from coaching, students really appreciated that these things were even being discussed explicitly in class. And so I know it's a really small sample size, and my volleyball girls loved it. Just because it's a thing that, they typically don't have time for in class. And we say, make sure you take care of yourselves, right? And then they go off and we're like, here's all your homework that you need to do. It's kind of how when admins are like, hey, you need to do self-care. Here's 400 forms to fill out. That when you make that space more obvious and a part of your classroom, it really shows students that you think of these things as important enough to carve space out in your class. All right, so for breathing exercises, this app, these screenshots, sorry, I'm trying to read the chat and not get distracted.
Chris is doing a social media plug for us. So funny.
These breathing exercises are from an app called Oak. This is available on iOS or Apple's App Store. There's a similar Android version. It looks almost the same. And I will be showing or sharing this from my iPad, but I will go through the descriptions of the 3 different breathing exercises. The first one is called Deep Calm, and it's just about really leveling out your nervous system so that you are calm and you're relaxed. And the next one is called box breathing. There was a screenshot of it earlier. People call it foursquare breathing or square breathing. And this is infamous because the Navy SEALs have practiced this, and it really allows for some stress relief and focus. And last, we have boosting alertness. So it is 7:32 here in Michigan, and this would be a breathing exercise that kind of wakes your body up in a way that doesn't involve caffeine. The site is called Oak. There's a link that it will be shared with you. It's linked in the slides. So we're going to launch a poll here. And of these 3 breathing exercises that we just briefly talked about, which one would you be most interested in practicing right now?
This is so interesting to watch because there are over 400 of you. And usually in my class of like 30, it's like,
can I get 15?
Yeah, can I get some of you?
Yeah, let's get one more. All right. Ooh, pretty even. Okay.
Oh, Deep Calm is pulling ahead though.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Alrighty, we see some people voting in the chat. That's okay. All right, so overwhelmingly we have Deep Calm. So what I will do, and this is if you're using Zoom to share, a nice feature is that you can share with your iPad or a tablet via a cable. I just happen to have one. Oops. And it says connect, and I'm pretty sure I connected. Uh-oh. Hold on one second. You know, it's not a Zoom webinar unless there is a tech issue.
Technology is fun.
When prompted. There we go. All righty. So this is literally just my iPad screen. And we picked Deep Calm. So when I click on this, what it will do is it will kind of go through the exercise for you. You'll hear a very nice calming voice kind of facilitate you through this process. If you are feeling lightheaded at any point, please stop doing the breathing exercise and just return to breathing normally.
Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Inhale.
All right, and so what you would do is you would facilitate this process with your students. You could do this right before a test or an assessment. You could do it if you know your students are coming back from some kind of big news, anything you would like. And I like doing it with the iPad. The name of the app is called Oak, O-A-K, just like the tree. And it's also a, just a good way to do it. There are also YouTube videos of different breathing exercises. This is just one format that you can use to share with students.
Yeah. And so I used to teach Spanish, and I remember I had a student that was always so nervous, and I would just tell him to take 3 deep breaths and that it was 5 minutes of his 24-hour day. and he was always able to focus and feel better because of it. So I feel better. I mean, I keep saying that there are over 400 of you guys, and I'm like a little bit nervous. My heart rate's a little bit high, but that helped. So sorry.
No, you're good.
It's you.
You're good. You're good. And again, you can do this in Pear Deck and have your students answer as well. So going back to this graphic here, when we're thinking about self-management, we also want to think about how we're going to kind of strategically approach how we manage our feelings and our next actions. So we can do this by organizing, prioritizing, and setting some SMARTY goals. So helping students prioritize. This is a draft of something that I used in the summer, where the whole week is laid out for students in terms of what assignments are due. They're hyperlinked, so students have kind of like a landing page that they can go to. The due dates are there, and whether or not there's a class meeting. This would also work asynchronously, just lay the week out for them so students know what things that they have to prioritize. So here are my assignments for this class. These are the things that I need to make sure I get done. Another part is, now this is total full disclosure. It says demo because this is not what my drive actually looks like. I am getting better now. I'm like on part 4 of a 5-part cycle or something. Would it help if one of us turned our camera
I'll turn
off?
mine off.
Okay, let's do this. There we go. All right. And so you can encourage your students to organize their drives in a way that makes it so they can't lose things. So in the digital space, right, it's very challenging for students to physically lose things. However, you can encourage that students do this.
Here's an example of what not to do. This is a real screen recording of my drive. In the spring, when I was teaching computer science, I had them all submit their code onto Google Classroom, but they unfortunately all labeled it untitled. They just downloaded it and uploaded it. So anytime I was trying to find anyone's work, it was all untitled. So make sure that they have strategies, they have a routine on how to label their things so that they also are organized.
Is there a cost for the Oak app? I see in the questions. Not at the time that I downloaded it, but that might be different now. I know there are always free versions of things, and I always default to going to YouTube to find anything else. Cool. All right, so we've all heard of SMART goals, but I've seen this version floating around on Twitter, and I like it more because it really focuses in on how we can be, as humans, more inclusive and more equitable in the things or in the decisions that we make for ourselves and the goals that we set for ourselves. So, you know, largely all this is the same, making sure that students make goals that are very specific. You can actually measure them. They have some kind of time related to them, but then also having them intentionally think about what can I do in my goal setting that makes it so that I'm being inclusive of other people and I'm equitable in what I am doing. All right, so back to this, we are going to go deeper into the response or into the others part of this graphic. So when we are thinking about this kind of scheme, we are kind of thinking about how do we include others in our decisions. Okay. One last, this is my favorite slide in this whole presentation. This is a Google form spreadsheet, the spreadsheet that spits out from the Google form, where a student of mine had missed a day of class and pretty much everything, it was a math class, so pretty much everything after that, he was really struggling to get back on his feet. So you can see in his responses, they're very, very short. You can tell that he's frustrated and he's feeling stressed out. What we ended up doing was we had a one-on-one meeting and we really broke down the different things. Now, again, this was during summer school. I had 15 students with a co-teacher, right? This is a lot to ask for during the school year, but when in whatever capacity you can, reach out to that student and kind of get them to a place where they're feeling better about their understanding. And then you can kind of see this particular student's growth over 1 week. So it really warms my heart when he said, I'm still overwhelmed, but I'm chilling. Like, I don't feel some type of way about math anymore. Like, there's a lot I have to do, but I know that I can handle it. And so that kind of growth and that kind of really good self-reflection and self-awareness is something that really warms my heart. All right, so that's the end of self-management, and we are now moving on to social awareness.
So social awareness is both recognizing social cues and developing social skills, but it also includes where do I fit in socially? What is society as a whole, and how do I fit into it? So we're going to talk first about social cues and social skills, and then later on I'll touch back on that summer program that I was writing curriculum for.
All right, so a way that you can facilitate some learning around social awareness is by playing games. We all love games. And this is a game that I kind of made up. It's not perfect, but it's kind of like telephone meets chain reaction. I grew up watching the Game Channel a lot when I was younger because I'm a weirdo. And that's what this game makes me think of. And so the whole premise is you are listening for connections that you can make with another person that is speaking. So a person starts and they share something about themselves, and one person grabs onto that fact and makes a connection to that fact. And so you're kind of making this chain of connections, but students are having to listen and not only just wait for their turn. There's a lot of hidden things in here, like how do you know someone's done talking? How do you know someone else doesn't want to take a turn? And you can point those things out explicitly so that students can learn about how to read social cues. So one thing that we both do, actually, I stole this from you. One thing that we do is always build norms around whatever we're doing, right? So in a middle school classroom, like, we really need to hone in on those norms. And this is what I use in a physical classroom, adapted by Anna, from Anna. But in a virtual space, it might look a little bit different.
So one thing that I've been doing a lot of, I teach a quarter-long class, so we just started a new quarter. I'm really excited to do this with my kids. But when I teach breakout room norms, I usually set the students up for a lot of awkwardness. So I'll usually have them play a game. It's a would you rather. Would you rather be a detective or a pilot? And then I put them in a breakout room and I say, talk about it for 2 minutes. No rules, just go talk about it, and then we'll come back. And usually, when they come back, I ask, how was it without those norms? And most kids will say, no one talked, it was really awkward. Why would you make us do that? Like, blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, so let's think about this. Now I'm going to give you 3 norms, and then we'll try it again. We'll play another round, and then you tell me how it went. We do this a few more times, adding on more norms until students can come to their own norms. So I send them into breakout rooms and I tell them, you guys need to create your own norms. If you guys haven't seen this before, one good way to monitor if kids are doing what they need to be doing in breakout rooms is by creating one document that all of the students will be working on. So from this screen grab, I could see that this group right here had not started yet, but there were only 2 out of the 4 of them on this slide, which told me that 2 of them were still reading the instructions, whereas this group was much farther along. So that's just a quick tip for breakout rooms, having kids come to the norms so that it sticks better and it allows kids to have voice and say in the classroom. Once we have them in breakout rooms, it's also super important for them to address each other, use their names, but also set them up for success in that way. So usually I have them, whoever has the shortest name will start. And then once you've shared, I want you to call on the next person. So the example on the sentence starters are right here. Hey everyone, I'm V, my drawing looks like this. Michaela, what does yours look like? And so that's kind of like chain reaction where you are, well, the opposite, I guess, because you're tagging other people to talk.
Right.
So how do you do grid view?
So going back, this is just a Google slide. And then on the bottom right corner where you see like the thumbnails of all your slide, you'll see a 3x3 grid. If you click that, it'll show you the grid view. And I'm pretty sure that it's in the view option as well, like on the menu. And it's not a Google Classroom thing, it's just Google
A Google
Slides.
Slides thing. It's pretty great. So this right here, we're teaching them social skills like addressing each other, using each other's names, listening to each other, and asking questions. Do you have anything to add?
I think really having students focusing in on that using students' name piece, because especially in the virtual space in like a almost anonymous Zoom room, it's like you, or kids like to say, hey teacher, and we really want students to learn, hey, like we have names, you have to not only pronounce them correctly, but you need to refer to people by their names so that they know that they're being addressed. It's just a cool thing. I love when people abbreviate breakout rooms BO rooms. Gets me every time.
Gets me.
All right. Another thing that we have to explicitly teach our students is how to be in a video conferencing space. So we need to teach specific skills around how to turn their cameras on, their microphones on and off, when to type in the chat. I really wish we had the Patrick Star gift in here. But students are in their spaces. We really can't tell them what they can and cannot do. And so if students are eating, we always just tell them, hey, don't worry. Oh, I love that. Hey, don't worry. You can eat in my class. Just turn your video off and your microphone off, just so it's not distracting to other people. So the comment in the chat about Somali students calling you teacher, they actually do that in Korea too. They just say teacher, really? And that's it.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, nice connection there.
Okay. So we early on had talked about personal identity. In the same summer program, we also talked about social identity. So the way that you view other people and the way that other people view you. It's super important that people are able to acknowledge how others perceive them as well as how they perceive others. Again, I want to emphasize that this was born out of the George Floyd murder and the riots that ensued and the protests that happened after that. Because I think that, and I hope that you all agree that it is our responsibility to help these students get through all of these really hard times, especially because we are online. And I think back in March, we didn't realize that we were gonna be online this long. And here we are. But so one way that we did this, after we did the identity map and students were able to acknowledge each other and learn more about each other, we slowly introduced these videos about different ways to think about privilege in a single story and stereotyping. So all of these videos, these are all amazing videos. They are all linked in these slides as well as the checklist at the end. But Dangers of a Single Story, that is where a woman talks about, the time. Okay, so these are all great videos. Highly recommend all of them. I won't take your time, but essentially what you want to take from it is that students need to recognize their privilege. They should be able to focus on like their own implicit bias and how that affects how they approach the world, because that is huge. And I think a lot of kids don't realize how they see each other until crazy things happen.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we have two components to go through really quickly. We're going to talk about relationship building and relationship maintenance. So this is the Healthy Relationship Wheel from the San Diego School District, and it just kind of looks at the different components of a healthy relationship. Ways that you can build relationships online. This is what we're all looking for, right? Things that I like to do, I always make sure I wish students a happy birthday. We're on block schedules, so if our class isn't going to see that particular student, then I make sure to do it the day early or whatever. Inviting students to share links in the chat. I also am a huge fan of passing time videos. So for any students who are really go-getters and want to come to your Zoom or your video conferencing class early, I like to play very, very low-key videos. There's like the tiny cooking kitchen videos that are a big hit with my students, asking students to request songs to play in between classes or during breaks. and giving students a choice on which breakout rooms that they are going to be going in. We'll get to that more on responsible decision making.
Another important thing that we need to teach our kids is how to identify different types of relationships. And when we say relationships to kids, they're always like, ooh, who are you dating? No. So a lot of kids, they know their friends, they know who they like to be around, but they don't realize sometimes that their friends might not be the best teammates. I work in Project Lead the Way, and most of our work is group work, and a lot of friendships are made and broken in that class, which is really sad. But it's a lot about recognizing their own collaboration styles. Cool. So we defined CRT really early on. We haven't mentioned it much, but we do a lot of CRT moves that are pretty sneaky throughout our lessons. And one of them is on the very first day of school, we allow students to introduce themselves. So you'll see numbering on the side. We write our students' names there, and then we call their number. And then once their number is called, then they will say their own name. And then they emphasize a mistake that people make when they say their name. So that's actually how I learned that Veronica's last name is not Veronica Cho, she is Veronica Che. And when I learned that, I lost my mind. It was ridiculous. Anyway.
Another thing that we like to do is creating connections. So this slide was here. We use this format in all of our SEL classes that we have across our district. And one student had said like, hey, like, I just want a friend. And then in the chat, someone said, I want a friend too, let's be friends. And these are 8th graders, right? I didn't think that was possible, but these kids really, really just want some connection. And any opportunity that we have as educators to build space for that connection in our classrooms is a good thing. And we should really focus on doing just that.
One thing I do every single day in my class is I have them send me a private chat about something. It's going to be something different every day. Today I said, how do you feel about Oreos? And people have feelings about Oreos, let me tell you. But I had them send me a private chat, tell me how you feel about Oreos. And then I allow them to change their name to their preferred name and to add their gender pronouns. And what that has helped me to do is to actually get to know who these kids are. And then once I know that they're ready to move on, then we move on. But I know a lot of kids, they really appreciate that. Parents really appreciate that we are acknowledging that people don't prescribe to the binaries.
Another thing to do in terms of creating connections is creating spaces for your students to connect with each other, as well as creating spaces for students to connect with you. I have like always had a teacher Snapchat since I was a grad student, and it's been wildly popular. And I have students who have since graduated high school who just reach out and say, hey, like this random thing. And you know, it's a really nice thing as a teacher to get those things when you're feeling a little bit down. You just need that extra bit of fuel to get you through your day. And by no means am I saying to infiltrate their spaces, right? Students are doing what they want on TikTok and Instagram and whatever. But if you create a very like safe space that you have control over. Yes, lots of boundaries. You know, it's a really awesome thing. Like a 6th grade student that I had last year shared their photography photos with me, and I thought that was so cute. And just giving them the opportunity to make connections with you outside of the school space is okay. And again, just be careful with these kinds of things. Make sure parents are aware, grown-ups are aware of that. All right, our very last thing, I know we're at 7:55, we're almost done, I promise, Anne, is responsible decision making. So again, we've got all of these 4 different competencies leading up to this point. And this one's just really about, yes, district policy as well. This one's also just about identifying your problems and creating solutions to those problems that are informed and going to be productive. So again, back to this responsibility piece. So, you know, things go well, students are aware, they manage themselves, they're socially aware, and they are making all these great relationships. Then this is when we as educators give students more autonomy in the classroom. So if we have summative projects, then we can allow students to choose options that fit them the best because they have a better understanding of who they are and what's going to work best for them. All right, so the last thing we have for you is this wonderful checklist that I can't give that. That's your own computer. I can't put that there. And this link is a forced copy link. So when you click it, it will be a post-webinar checklist. So we kept alluding to, you're gonna have the resources, all the things are there. It is a one-stop shop essentially for how you can really, organize your learning, I would say. So this post-webinar checklist has links to specific slides of where we discuss things. It has some reflection questions that you can ask yourself and how you will leverage this learning in your teaching. I broke the Google, oops, sorry. And it's also linked in the copy of the slides. So, let it be, give it a minute. There are many people here. And the resources in the slides are all compiled here. So you don't actually have to navigate through the slides in order to do that.
So almost everything that we referenced, if you guys wanted that breathing app, it's linked in here right now. All of the videos that I talked about, the unedited versions are linked here.
Yeah, and any sources that we use, we just directly link you to our source because we want to be very transparent about the things that we made and the things that we borrowed.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Veronica and Anna. We really appreciate it. I got some good tips myself. I wanted to say a couple of things. First, we do have I believe, Chris, we have a exit ticket, I hope, which they have just put in the chat. He's ahead of me. Please go ahead and fill out that exit ticket. It's really important for us in the future to know what you are wanting to hear more about. I'm going to pass it to Mark to close us up, and then I will talk about certificates and stuff like that. Mark?
Yes, thank you so much, Anne. And I'll just keep it very brief and short, but thank you, Veronica and Anna, and certainly to the nearly 400 members that joined on here tonight. I know that everyone's working so hard, twice as hard and twice as long. And this is so critically to know that we take care of our kids' social and emotional health, but also ourselves. So on behalf of NEA President Becky Pringle, I'll talk to her in the morning. We salute you and the work that you're doing out there every day to keep our kids safe and keeping them learning. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and have a great evening. And we'll talk to you at the next webinar.
Thank you so much, Mark. For those of you that are interested in recordings and certificates, I'm telling you ahead of time, you need to give us at least 2 to 4 days to get everything up and working. But you can go to, and if my friends can put this in the chat, nea.org/webinars. Now, for those of you that have visited that site before, it has changed a little. The look will be different, but it will send you to a list of all kinds of different webinars that NEA offers. And then you just have to look for this particular webinar on social emotional learning. You click on that link and it'll take you to the PowerPoint, the recording, as well as directions of how to obtain a certificate. Okay, so again, that web address is nea.org/webinars. The document, we can put the Google link there for the other documents too. Jen, make sure that we know where that link is before we go off. We'll try to find things in the chat too, if that's relevant. So if others of you have additional questions, we will stay on for a little bit. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. There's a question in the Q&A that we haven't addressed that is about a student. I'm gonna send what I have now, but that's about a student who you reached out to and they kind of like spoke some profanity towards you and didn't let you speak. That sounds like a very frustrated student, right? And what you can do in that space is say, what I like to do is say, get out whatever it is you need to get out before we work on what we need to do together. Because the fact that, whatever is going on in their life, they probably have little control over. And just reaching out to them again, and saying, hey, like, I'm on your team and I'm on your side, reassuring them that you're an adult that they can trust is something that can try to help. Just focus on building that relationship first, because all other things can come later. Any deadlines and things, you as an educator can just give them some grace there. So hopefully that's a strategy that can work for you.
Veronica and Anna, there were a lot of questions about strategies for early learners. If there were things that you would specifically modify or other things that you would recommend. I don't know.
I think a lot of the things can be adapted for younger learners. Were they talking specifically about the personal and social awareness pieces?
It was kind of across the board.
Okay. A lot of the videos, I think Go Noodle has a lot of great videos that can be adapted. The Feeling Faces chart, I think that's geared more towards the younger ages. I would need to see. Oh, I did the thing where I tried to control your computer from my.
Another thing that's really helpful, even with my students, but any student right now in this virtual space, having them physically go up and do something is a really good strategy to just, they won't know that you're aware of what they need as a human person, but that, show and tell is making a huge comeback in this space.
That's super
and
true.
Just giving students some space to discuss these things, giving them really like sentence starters would be really helpful for earlier learners. Use these words, use one adjective, use one verb, or whatever it is that you want to do, or whatever you're looking for in your students. That's one way. Structure, I guess, is the way I would think of it.
Yeah. So having it be less open-ended and more scaffolded, like a lot, like what Veronica was saying was like plug and chug, not plug and chug, but having those sentence starters that
students can grab onto almost. And so they're
with options.
Right. So that they're less worried about like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm 7. Those types of things.
I have a first grader at my house who's virtual learning full time. And one of the things that they've been doing, which I've seen in the past, they have star students every week, but the teacher has created a slide that has various feelings and things on it that the kids then talk about to relate with one another as part of their morning meeting. And that carries out through the week as they talk about different pieces and find commonalities with one another. So all the first graders, I mean, parents are having to help, of course, do that, but they, so far, for the most part, they have. I would think if you have parents who would not be as technologically advanced, that it could be a one-on-one with a teacher to help the kid do it. But that seems to have gone a long way in building relationships with those smaller kids from a distance.
For sure. And stuff like that really helps with reading. I know when I worked in kinder, like it was a lot of repetitive, like listening while reading and seeing it. But
to any of you early elementary teachers, I literally do not know how you do
that. Is amazing.
That
is incredible.
I can't imagine teaching a student how to read, let alone not having all of the, I don't know. The real heroes here. I can't even fathom what that looks like.
Someone asked, how do you draw in those students who log on and interact with the teacher, but not with their peers? I usually start with like smaller groups in situations like that. So if it's just me and one student, and then I ask them who they would like to be paired with. Like I said, Project Lead the Way is very much group oriented or partner projects. So I always ask them, like, who do you know in the class? Who would you like to work with? Are you okay with being randomly placed with anyone? And that usually helps with engagement.
Another thing you can do is join a breakout room with the student, but stay muted so that you're kind of like their security blanket, and just encourage them to participate and interact with their peers, knowing that and giving that like assurance that you're there without actually having to do anything, and then kind of weaning off of that. Alrighty.
All right. I don't know if there's any more questions. I feel for these kindergarten and first grade teachers, man. I watched, as I'm trying to do my work, I watch our first grade teacher and I'm just like, God bless you. By the end of the day, I don't know how many times she's told them how to get into Canvas. So,
For sure.
you know, I know that is patience building on the best days. So thank you for everything that you have done. Oh, there was
I
another.
would also say just visual cues on all levels. Make things more visual. And if there are visual impairment issues, figure out ways, talk to your special education department. They are geniuses and always have the best solutions to all of the problems that we find. Yep, we're all exhausted. I hear you on that.
So David Scott has a question in the Q&A, which I have also been thinking about this a lot in terms of what do we take from these experiences into classrooms as we go back. And in a lot of ways, I mean, I personally hope that this changes things, right? Not only in terms of technology integration, because we've been borrowing and stealing for schools to be able to do that for years, but just in the re-emphasis on social emotional skills. I mean, not that everyone didn't realize it was important before, but it really seems much more central to the conversation now. Ladies or Mark, I don't know if you have something else to add.
Honestly, if someone could write that into some policy that this is minutes that we have to have in the classroom, you know, this kind of work, this kind of stuff, you know, parents are rightfully upset that their students aren't getting that social emotional learning in their classrooms. And so when we do go back, it better be, sorry, I'm getting really heated now. It better be that we make room for this, because clearly this is where students get all of this social learning, right? A big portion of it comes from going to school, and schools are so often like just like meet the benchmarks, meet the standards. Well, what about students as humans? Like if this is the issue we're having, and you know, grown-ups are mad that their students aren't getting that, then we really need to come together as communities and like stakeholders and students' educations and really make space for this in not a disingenuous way, but a very deliberate way.
Because there's no way we're getting back from this, right?
No.
Like, we can't do school the same way we have for the past however many years.
And pretend like it's gonna work
again.
again.
And pretend that this didn't happen. Like we are all living a shared trauma after trauma after trauma. And the fact that people are mishandling it and are not addressing it is very, very frustrating.
So we just continue to fight for what's best for our students.
Yeah, when I was working the polls the past 2 weeks, I worked with some parents, and they were saying our middle school kids went back today in Wake County here in Raleigh, and parents are trying to decide what to do about second semester for the high school. High school is virtual for the remainder of the semester, but they were saying how their kids, their high school kids, were so struggling because of the social connection that they're not getting now with their friends, and they're having to make some big decisions here in the next few weeks about what to do, whether or not to send their kids back or to keep them in remote learning, and the sacrifice of how depressed they really are because they're not with their kids. They're getting everything of high school on lots of rigor and lots of work and assignments, but none of the fun stuff that made school so great.
Right. Yeah, and I will say, like, our season just ended, but I'm an assistant coach for a high school volleyball team. And if I didn't have that person to person connection every day, I don't know if I would have made it. Like, because
I struggled. Yeah. I was really jealous because she was able to see students that I used to have, and I'd be like, how is so-and-so?
Right. And like,
just like grasping for any kind of like any connection.
right?
Oh,
And it's really
It was
important.
awful.
What a great way for our union to come together, right, and advocate for these kinds of things. And with a new Secretary of Education,
Yes.
I think that that will be a more
And Mrs. Biden.
an ear that we have not had, at least at the national level. So I hope it does change the conversation. And from an advocacy point of view, it is a great time to engage in your union to make those things happen for our students. So,
And it's just so interesting, like right at the beginning of quarantine when everyone was like celebrating all the teachers and being like, oh, teachers are amazing. And now here we are.
right. It
Everyone's
changed
just-
kind of fast, didn't it? Anyway. Well, I think we're postulizing now, right? Is that a word? Postulate? Whatever. Anyway, I should turn this off since I just